You know that marriage has been created by God. Marriage is a completion of creation, where God chose a certain lack of uniformity in human life. He created male and female. But to that lack of uniformity, He also created an act of unity, an act of harmony. A harmony that comes from the difference between male and female. As we've heard nice harmony from the choir today, we know that harmonious singing is better, it's more pleasing, it's more beautiful than singing in unison. Now, there is something that entered the world that caused a disharmony, that caused some of the notes to go too high or too low. So they didn't match. They didn't go together anymore. And that source of disharmony was sin. Through sin, there was now a division, a disunity, disharmony. Sin is founded on pride. On the day of the sin of Adam and Eve, they had chosen, each one had chosen themselves over their partner. They had chosen themselves over God. They had chosen their desires over their intellect. God, as is made clear in the nuptial blessing that we will do at the end of the Our Father, the unity that God created in the marriage bond at creation was not destroyed by sin. It is damaged, but not destroyed. It was not destroyed by the flood. It was given an extra challenge, but it was not destroyed. Marriage still exists, even in a state of sin that we find ourselves in, even in a state of damage to nature. When Adam and Eve sinned, they blamed each other. When Adam and Eve sinned, they hid from each other. They were ashamed. When Adam and Eve sinned, they hid from God. Fear entered human life. There is a way out. There is a way out of the disunity. There's a way out of the disharmony. There's a way out of the division. But the way out isn't easy. The way out is the way of humility, the opposite of pride. As pride is the foundation of every sin, including the first, humility is the foundation of every virtue. It's the foundation of all unity. Louis Mora, humility is not easy. It is, however, the path of victory. Without it, there is no victory. Without it, there is no unity. Without it, there is no harmony. Without it, it is impossible to please God. In our reading from the Ephesians, St. Paul says, right before our pericope begins, he says, "Submit one to another." Submit one to another. And then he goes on to describe what he's talking about. And in particular, he says, for women, submitting one to another is properly called submission and respect. For men, that way of submitting to their wives is properly described as love. Love is a way of submitting to your spouse. Respect is a way of submitting to your spouse. Submission to your spouse is the way of humility. St. Paul says something, he says a lot of things that are startling. One thing that he mentions in particular, which is really quite startling, is that he says Christ has loved the church to such an extent that he died for it. And in dying for the church, he has purified it, so that then he can present it to himself, a mystical bride without blemish. Is it possible for a husband to purify his wife by loving her? Does St. Paul really suggest that all husbands act in a divine way? That husbands participate in the divine purification of their brides? And the answer is yes. Because marriage is a sacrament, and the exercise of that union is a holy thing, and it causes holiness. Yes, when husbands and wives submit to each other, they cause each other to be more holy. They are acting out divine, not only divine instructions, but divine power for supernatural effect. It's very easy for husbands to look at their wives and say, you have to submit to me. Or for wives to look at their husbands and saying, you're not loving me enough. It's easy to point to the other person and describe their duties. It's a lot harder to describe our own and to be faithful to our own. What does it mean to love your wife? What does it mean to love? The definition of love by Thomas Aquinas is, love is willing the good of the other as other, both in thought, word, and deed. Willing the good of the other. How do we know what's good for the other? How do we know what's good for the other? Sometimes the only way to know what's good for them is to ask them. In this is an act of humility. We have to seek to know the good of the other, and we have to seek to meet the needs that we find. Both in submitting to our husband or in submitting by loving our wife, both in respecting our husband or loving our wife, humility is required. It's not a side issue. There is no respect without humility. There is no love without humility. One act of humility, one thing that humility accepts, is that we are inadequate for the task at hand. Lewis, if you think you can be a good husband all on your own, I have bad news for you. Maura, if you think you can be a good wife just because you want to try, I have news for you. You can't. Humility, first of all, accepts that we are inadequate in fulfilling the task at hand. It requires, number one, the help of God. Number one, the help of God. You must pray every day together. This is, first of all, an act of humility. We can't do it on our own. Second, humility recognizes that you can't do it without your partner. You must ask your partner their considered opinion as to how to be a good spouse. Honey, what would you like me to do today to make you happy? That is an act of humility. We can't do it on our own. First of all, we submit to God in prayer. Secondly, we submit to our partner and their considered opinion. Number three, we submit to education. We do spiritual reading and other important reading to engineer our own growth in the skills required for good communication and for love and respect. Fourthly, humility makes us seek help with regard to spiritual direction, with regard to advice, with regard to direction of the parish priests and other authorities and helpers, friends, parents, grandparents, etc. By humility, we accept that we are inadequate at the task at hand, and therefore we need, first of all, God's help. Secondly, the help of our spouse. Thirdly, good education, good reading. Fourthly, the advice and help of others, priests, friends, family. Humility is not an easy road. It is, however, the road of victory, the road of joy, the road of fulfillment, personal fulfillment, and it is the road of happiness in our marriage and happiness in our family.